Humans suffer much in life, not because of major events like loss or failure, but precisely because every day we let our minds drift in the current of competition, comparison, judgment, and self-torment. When someone is better than us, envy arises in our hearts. When someone is worse than us, contempt emerges in our minds. When someone is different, we feel uncomfortable. When someone is similar, we become wary. And so, we create countless imaginary adversaries, then tirelessly battle things that never truly existed. The Buddha taught that the mind is like the surface of water. When stirred, it becomes murky and distorts images. When it settles, it becomes crystal clear and reflects everything as it truly is. But how many people nowadays are willing to let their minds settle? Because we are too busy trying to prove ourselves right and others wrong. Too busy to show off that we are better than others. Too busy to judge who lives virtuously and who lives crookedly. In that busyness, we lose the gentle voice that helps us live kindly. We lose a heart that knows how to listen and how to love. We lose the pure, inherent light within. Sometimes, just a single superior remark is enough to make us anxious. A differing opinion can ignite a fire of anger in our hearts. Often, before we even understand why someone acted a certain way, we hastily judge them, unknowingly squandering all our blessings. The Buddha taught, "Do not look at others' faults. Do not just focus on others' actions. Return to look at yourself and your own unpurified mind." Yet, we do the opposite. We scrutinize others with sharp eyes, but rarely look at ourselves with kindness. We meticulously examine every small detail of others, but easily overlook our own mistakes. We wish for others to change while we ourselves refuse to transform. And so, we get lost in a spiral of confrontation and suffering. In this chaotic life, everyone sometimes sighs and asks themselves, "Why do I live well, but am still misunderstood? Why am I gentle, yet others may not necessarily love me? Why do I try to be kind, yet my heart is still heavy with unspoken sorrows?" But my friend, as the Buddha taught in countless sermons we've heard, just keep living well every day. Whatever others do, let them be. That is their karma. When your mind is at peace, afflictions naturally dissipate, like someone walking through a bustling market. The surroundings are noisy, but if the mind is not agitated, the sounds of life are just like wind passing through the ears and then vanishing. This life is like a big market, where everyone has their own voice, and no one truly understands anyone else completely. If we constantly try to please others, we will sooner or later become tired, exhausted, and sometimes even lose ourselves. But if we know how to live truthfully with our conscience, gently with others, and kindly with life, then whether the world praises or criticizes us, we will maintain our serenity. Often you ask yourself, what am I living a good life for? Will living gently be looked down upon? Is living straightforwardly easy to get hurt in this unpredictable world? The answer, in fact, has never been in the judgment of others, but in your own heart. At some point, you will realize that living kindly is not to prove anything, but to allow yourself to pass through a lifetime lightly, purely, and without shame. And from here, the journey of letting go, understanding, compassion, living well, and maintaining a peaceful mind will open up for you. Because when the mind is at peace, life naturally becomes gentle. In this impermanent life, people are always caught in currents that often we ourselves don't understand why we cannot step out of. Constantly chasing after the praise and criticism of others, constantly trying to tidy up every judging glance, every careless word, every expectation of those around us, until we look back and realize we are left with only a weary heart. Every morning, we open our eyes and enter life with the thought of having to please others. Every evening, we return, tossing and turning with the fear that we might have made someone unhappy. And this cycle repeats day after day, like an endless loop. However, if we look deeply into the nature of life, we will see that all phenomena change in every instant. No one truly has the time to care about us so much that we have to sacrifice our own peace. What we perceive as a judgmental gaze is sometimes just a fleeting moment for someone else. But we hold it in our hearts like a heavy stone, carrying it all day, and even for years. According to the Buddha's teachings, the root of suffering lies in attachment. We cling to the idea that others must like us, must acknowledge us, must follow our will. Only then do we feel at peace. This very expectation leads us into a maze with no exit. Living among people, we forget that everyone carries their own worries. The market vendor worries about the stall rent for next month. The student worries about their exams. The mother worries about her child who has a fever at home. The cleaner worries about their child's tuition fees. Everyone is busy in their own world, so no one truly has enough time to judge us as much as we think. But the human mind has a strange habit of always exaggerating the attention the world pays to itself. We think they are thinking about us, but in reality, they are thinking about themselves. Because of this illusion, we become prisoners of invisible expectations. According to Buddhist teachings, placing our minds in the hands of others is what causes us the most suffering. In the Dhammapada, there is a verse that says, "One who lives dependent on the praise and blame of the world is like a dry leaf swept away by the wind, without support. The wise are like a great rock in the open sea. They do not waver, even when buffeted by waves." When we live to please others, our minds are like that leaf. The wind of gossip blows through, and we scatter. The wind of judgment blows, and we fall. The wind of others' satisfaction or dissatisfaction blows, and we fly along with it. At that moment, we are no longer ourselves. We are pulled by every gaze, every word, every desire that does not belong to us. We lose our true self without knowing it. Some people often ask why, despite their efforts to be good, life is still not easy for them. But in most such moments, who are we trying for? Are we living for the convenience of others, or for our own inner peace? Living to please others is, in essence, a heavy cloak that suffocates us. We constantly carry the fear of being misunderstood, ridiculed, or judged. We are always worried about how to make others happy, while our own happiness is forgotten. Then we forget that in this world, the only person we have to live with until the very end is ourselves. In psychological analysis, people who constantly try to please others stem from two things. Either they have been hurt in the past and fear conflict, or they lack self-worth and therefore need external validation. When the mind is not strong enough, we easily become people who live according to the world's expectations. This is taught by the Buddha in the doctrine of dependent origination. All actions have internal causes from consciousness. When we do not see our true value, we easily let others decide our happiness. This weak mind makes us entangled in emotional dependence on others. And so, we become people who constantly run around trying to please them. To help you understand this better, the Lin Buddhist channel wants to tell you a story about Ms. Hang and the mirror of life. Ms. Hang lives in Saigon. Her job is an accountant for a private company. Every day, she leaves home early and returns after dark. As soon as she enters the office, she always smiles gently at anyone passing by. She tells herself that as long as she is nice and pleasant, everyone will love her. So every day, she tries to please everyone. A colleague asks her to help with a data sheet. She accepts. Someone else asks her to redo a set of documents because they made a mistake. She also accepts. Sometimes, while she is quickly eating her lunchbox, a colleague rushes over, asking for urgent help with a task. She puts her lunchbox down and immediately does it. Not because she has too much free time, but because she is afraid to refuse. Afraid of being called unsociable. Afraid of being seen as not a good person. Every evening when she returns home, she becomes the obedient daughter in her mother's eyes, the thoughtful elder sister in her siblings' eyes, and the neighbor everyone can rely on. Every evening, she helps one person carry things, helps another calculate electricity bills, cooks a meal for her mother, or gathers clothes for laundry. She doesn't dare to say she's tired for fear of upsetting others. She is immersed in a whirlwind, trying to please everyone and forgetting that she needs to breathe. Until one day, the company suddenly experienced a major error in its financial report. Figures were mixed up, documents lacked information, and many small errors accumulated into a serious problem. Upon inspection, it was discovered that most of the errors came from the tasks she had agreed to help others with. Because she took on too much, she didn't have enough time to review everything, leading to a chain of mistakes. In the emergency meeting, everyone looked at her and assumed she was careless. No one mentioned that they had previously asked her to do things that were not her responsibility. No one stood up to say that she was just trying to help everyone. They remained silent. Only she stood alone in the meeting room, with weariness covering her heart. All her efforts over time suddenly became meaningless. That evening, when she returned home, she looked at herself in the mirror. The mirror reflected a woman with a gaunt face, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, and an exhausted expression. She suddenly realized that all this time she had been living not for herself, but for fear of others being unhappy. She suddenly asked herself, who am I living to please? And what am I getting in return? Why am I good, but still blamed? Why do I try, but still not get loved? In that moment, she understood that she had lost herself in the pursuit of others' satisfaction. And that moment was when she faced the mirror of life. It truthfully reflected that if she continued to live like this, she would no longer recognize herself. When Ms. Hang stepped out of that dark room that night, her heart was shaken. But something was also beginning to change. The next day, at the office, when a colleague asked her to help with a task that was not her responsibility, she smiled and said that she had to complete her own work first. If she finished early, she would assist afterward. That smile was no longer forced, but gentle, coming from someone who knew she was on the right path. When she returned home, when her mother asked her to help with a task that her younger sister could easily do, she politely said that she would only do what was necessary so as not to be overloaded. And for the first time in her life, she felt her heart as light as a breath. From this story, we clearly see that living to please others only makes us tired and lost in our own lives. What is important is not how to be praised or loved, but how to keep our minds clear and peaceful. Living kindly is how we face life with a kind heart. Kindness is not about taking a loss, nor is it about surrendering to others' desires. Kindness is knowing one's own limits, knowing what to do and what to stop, knowing how to be gentle without being weak. In the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha taught that the mind is the root of all actions. If the mind is at peace, life is at peace. If the mind is agitated, all phenomena are agitated. People suffer because they let their minds depend on the reactions of others. If someone is happy, we are happy. If someone is sad, we are sad. If someone praises us, we are elated. If someone criticizes us, we are dejected. That is not living, but merely existing in a shred built by others. The Buddha also taught that validation from others is just like a water bubble, here one moment and gone the next. Only when we truly realize our self-worth can we stand firm like a rock. The lesson learned from Ms. Hang's story is not about blaming others, but about looking back at oneself. When we live for the satisfaction of the world, we sacrifice our own peace. Others may be happy for a moment, but we suffer for a lifetime. Living kindly is not about becoming someone else's shadow, but about making our own minds bright. When the mind is bright, actions are naturally wholesome. When the mind is bright, we don't need anyone's praise. We still feel joy. When the mind is bright, criticism doesn't cause us suffering, and praise doesn't blind us. Only those who understand the impermanence of life know how to live properly. In the end, you will find that no one lives your life for you. No one is responsible for your life. No one accompanies you to the end except yourself. So, living kindly means living for inner peace. When you know who you are, what you do, and what is right for you, you will no longer chase after external voices. When you feel your heart is clear, try to breathe slowly. Breathe in and realize that you are living for yourself. Breathe out and smile at the peace forming in your mind. The breath helps us return to ourselves. The breath reminds us that this life is ours. It belongs to no one else. Each breath is a reminder that we don't have to become the person the world wants us to be. We just need to become the person our heart feels no shame for. So the answer to the question, who are we living to please, is actually very simple. You live to please yourself in righteous ways. You live to honor your parents' kindness. You live so your heart doesn't have to be strained by the fear of being judged. You live so that every evening when you look in the mirror, you see a peaceful face. When we live like that, life naturally becomes much more pleasant. Those who love us stay. Those who don't understand us quietly leave. But most importantly, we no longer lose ourselves. Human life is as short as a breath. If we only use it to please others, we will miss our own peace. Only when we know how to live for a clear mind, live for goodness, live for awakened awareness, do we truly live. When the mind is at peace, afflictions naturally dissipate. When the mind is clear, life naturally becomes clear. And when the mind is free, the path ahead is always open. There are days you step out and feel like the whole world is swaying. A careless word from someone can agitate your mind. A gentle criticism is enough to make your heart uneasy for the whole day. Humans, since birth, have been in the current of impermanence, so no one can escape the fluctuations of daily life. However, the older we get, the more we realize that true storms do not come from the outside, but from how we receive what happens to us. Life is already short. If we let our emotions be controlled by the praise and criticism of others, our feet will never stand firm anywhere. We will forever be like a leaf in the wind, swept away, not knowing where we are drifting. From the very beginning, the Buddha taught that life is a sea of suffering, because humans can hardly avoid being affected by external circumstances. We are happy because of a word of praise, sad because of a word of criticism, angry because of something that doesn't go our way, worried about an uncertain future. But the core lies in forgetting that every word others say belongs to them. The emotions we allow those words to cause belong to us. If we grasp it, we suffer. If we let it go, our minds become light. That is a simple rule, yet most of us live contrary to it. We think we must react, explain, prove ourselves so that others understand. The more we try to prove, the more we tie ourselves to unnecessary afflictions. In the spirit of Buddhist teachings, karma is intentional action. A person's words, whether gentle or harsh, are their karma. If they hurt someone with their words, that is bad karma they create for themselves. Whether they speak rightly or wrongly, kindly or maliciously, they are responsible for it. As for us, when we hear those words, whether our mind arises in anger or joy, sadness or happiness, that belongs to our own karma. It's not because someone throws a burning coal that we must pick it up. Burning coal only burns the hand of the one who wants to hold it. The one who throws the coal carries their anger. But we don't necessarily have to accept that fire into our hearts. However, human nature often reacts faster than it thinks. Upon hearing unpleasant things, we immediately become annoyed. If someone speaks wrongly about us, we immediately want to argue. If someone fabricates stories about us, we immediately want to explain ourselves. These are very natural reactions, because deep down, we always want to be seen correctly and treated fairly. We don't want to be misspoken about, misunderstood, compared, and certainly not looked down upon. This very desire makes us tired, because we unintentionally hand over control of our minds to others. They just need to say one word to make us lose sleep and appetite. They just need to utter a reproachful word, and our minds are tied up. This life is short. But people often let small things hurt themselves. Many times, we think that if we live well, live kindly, others will treat us nicely. But life doesn't work that simply. We do good because our minds are clear, because we want to sow good karma, not because we expect others' praise. If we only live kindly to be loved, we will be disappointed when we face criticism. But if we live mindfully, because our hearts are oriented towards goodness, then no matter what anyone says, we will maintain peace in our hearts. A state of peace comes from within, not from others' opinions. To see this clearly, listen to the story of Mr. Fuck, a gentle man who lives with his wife and young son in a peaceful residential area. He works quietly in a small company, lives frugally, and is amiable with everyone. He naturally avoids conflict or arguments with anyone. However, next to his house lives Ms. Tu, an elderly woman who is often talkative and sometimes speaks untruthfully about others' affairs. For some reason, Miss Tu frequently slandered Mr. Fuck to their neighbors, sometimes saying he was selfish, sometimes claiming he never helped anyone, and other times telling false stories about his family. At first, Mr. Fuck didn't pay attention, thinking that everyone has their moments of unhappiness and speaks nonsense to pass the time. However, he gradually heard more and more unpleasant remarks, especially when Miss Tu's words began to affect his image in the eyes of those around him. What bothered him most was that he had no idea what he had done to be treated this way. He was so gentle that he helped anyone who asked, answered anyone who called, yet he was judged unfairly. Every time he heard someone recount Ms. Tu's slanderous words, a fire seemed to ignite in his heart. He wanted to confront her, to explain himself, to prove that she was fabricating stories. But the more he reacted, the more Miss Tu talked. It seemed that every bit of his anger became an excuse for her to tell new stories. The more he protested, the more reason she had to continue. And so, he fell into a cycle of anger without realizing it. Now, seeing him constantly stressed, his wife told him to let it go, but letting go is easier said than done. One day, he met an elderly friend, a retired uncle. Seeing his wrinkled face, the uncle asked him what was wrong. Mr. Fuck poured out all the grievances in his heart and hoped for advice. The uncle smiled gently and said that what others say is their karma. If you listen and get angry, that's your karma. They sow unwholesome words. That is what they have to face. But if you get angry, you are picking up the burning coal they threw. If you keep holding that fire, you are the one who gets hurt, not them. Only those who know how to let go truly find peace. Those words were like cool water poured into his heart. He suddenly realized that all this time he had been living no differently than someone picking up burning coals thrown by others. They threw them out of anger or a habit of slandering. But he bent down, picked them up, and held them in his hand. Getting burned was inevitable. But that burn was not caused by the other person, but by himself picking it up. From that day on, he decided to change his way of life. He no longer reacted whenever he heard someone speak ill of him. When people recounted stories, he would just smile and say that it was their business. How they thought was not how he lived. He practiced silence in the face of trivial matters. He spent time nurturing inner peace instead of letting his mind chase after gossip. Several months passed, and something interesting happened. Ms. Tu began to speak less ill of him. Not because someone forced her, but because she realized that speaking ill of someone who didn't react really brought no satisfaction. Gradually, she saw her own unreasonableness. One time, she even smiled and greeted him lightly when they met at the gate. Mr. Fuck's mind, at that moment, felt as light as if he had just shed a burden he had carried for too long. He understood that what made her change was not his arguments or rebuttals, but the silence and serenity he chose. From Mr. Fuchs' story, we can see that others' words are their karma. If we accept them, we suffer. If we let them go, we are light. If we live being pulled up and down by the noise around us, our lives will never be peaceful. This world will always have people who praise, people who criticize, people who like us, and people who don't. That is normal, because each person is a separate world with different habits, personalities, and karmic forces. We cannot control them, but we can control our reactions. The Buddha once taught that no one can hurt us if we don't allow it. Insulting words are just wind passing by if our minds are stable enough. The human mind is like a surface. The more it fluctuates, the easier it is to get agitated and murky. When the mind is calm, even a pebble dropped cannot create waves. He also taught that if someone curses us and we do not accept it, the one who suffers is them. This is a lesson about letting go. It is the wisdom to know what to hold on to and what to release. When we look back at our own journey, we realize that most suffering comes from paying too much attention to things beyond our control. We hear someone say, "We're not good enough," and we struggle to prove them wrong. We hear others judge us, and we feel hurt and resentful. We are affected by every word of praise or criticism, forgetting that our true value does not lie in others' mouths. If we live based on others' words, our minds will never be at peace. But if we live based on our own inner clarity, nothing can shake us. The lesson drawn from the spirit of Buddhism is that everyone carries their own karma. What they do, say, or think is their business. How we react is what's important. If we know how to keep our minds clear, even malicious words become a gentle breeze. If we know how to let go, even someone who does bad things cannot cause us suffering. Letting go is not defeat. Silence is not weakness. Forbearance is not allowing others to take advantage. Letting go is choosing peace for ourselves. Silence is choosing wisdom instead of anger. Forbearance is choosing the wholesome path instead of sowing more bad karma. Breath is the doorway to peace. When the mind is agitated by others' words, let's breathe in and tell ourselves, "I know I am being affected." As we breathe out, let's smile to remind ourselves that there is no reason to hold on to that annoyance. Breathe in to notice the mind's agitation. Breathe out to let the mind settle. When the breath is reconnected, our mind is connected to inner peace. Thanks to this, small things no longer keep us awake at night. Meaningless arguments no longer drag our minds down. What others say no longer pierces our hearts like an arrow. In this life, there are things worth holding on to and things worth letting go of. Competition and comparison belong to the things we should let go of. Let go to live lightly. Let go for mental ease. Let go to go further on the path to finding peace. When we know how to yield a little, we will find our hearts more spacious. When we know how to smile and let things pass, we will find life gentler. And when we know that winning or losing does not determine our self-worth, we will live with more confidence and freedom. The mind is the root. If the root is strong, the tree will flourish. If the mind is clear, life will be clear. Return to yourself in every breath every action, every word. Choose peace instead of competition. Choose love instead of judgment. Choose gentleness instead of trying to prove yourself. Then we will see life open up like a vast door, leading us to the serenity we have long sought. Life always has moments that make us pause and ask ourselves what truly matters amidst the rush and incessant clashes of daily life. We often think that we must have a lot of money, must have our voice heard in the family, must prove ourselves right in every argument to maintain our position. But the longer we live, the more we experience, the more we gradually realize a truth deeply imbued with the spirit of impermanence. What we fiercely contend for today, when looked back upon just a few months later, might seem as small as a grain of sand lost on a long beach. Things we thought we couldn't let go of will one day fade like the sound of wind chimes that stopped ringing when the evening wind died down. Human life is inherently short. Anger is easily ignited, but peace must be learned a lifetime to acquire. Some say that life is like a boiling cup of water. If we keep holding it in our hands just to prove how well we can endure the heat, in the end, we are the ones who suffer. A wise person does not cling to winning or losing, but knows to put the cup down, wait for it to cool, and then drink. That is the spirit of impermanence, of letting go, of understanding that all emotions, no matter how strong, are just waves passing through our lives. When we learn to look at everything with gentler eyes, every wave becomes calm. The Buddha taught about the cause of suffering, that the root of affliction does not lie in circumstances, but in the mind, clinging to what one likes and resisting what one dislikes. When we want everything to go our way, when we demand that others behave according to our expectations, when we consider our words as ultimate truth, life becomes heavy. This is why relationships within the family, seemingly the most peaceful place, often give rise to many storms, simply because everyone wants others to understand them, listen to them, and respect them. In Buddhist teachings, the word Nahan, forbearance, is considered a key that opens the door to peace. Forbearance is not enduring in pain or remaining silent in injustice, but the inner stability of the mind so as not to be carried away by emotions. A person who practices forbearance understands that if they get angry, their words will become arrows that wound both others and themselves. A person who practices forbearance is also compassionate enough to see that everyone carries their own wounds. And sometimes they behave not out of malice, but because of an inner insecurity they don't know how to express. When we look deeply in this way, all conflicts within the family will no longer be a battle, but become an opportunity for everyone to train their minds. But to maintain such serenity amidst a busy life is not easy, especially when we live with different temperaments, strong personalities, and sometimes overly large egos. In such circumstances, if just one person knows how to be forbearing, to understand, and to step back, the family can avoid countless unnecessary arguments. The Lin Ung Buddhist channel wants to tell you the story of Mr. Lam, a father whose gentleness transformed an entire household. It's not a story of a celebrity or anything grand, but it is a mirror reflecting for anyone living in a family where many things remain unsaid. where there are distances that seem impossible to bridge. This story reminds us that sometimes just a little compassion, a little forbearance, can resolve a lifetime of afflictions. Mr. Lamb is a man over 60, living with his son and daughter-in-law named Thao. His family appears harmonious from the outside. His son is gentle, his daughter-in-law is capable, and their work is stable. But inside, there are hidden currents that outsiders don't easily see. Ms. Thao has a hot temper. She says what she thinks, and often when angry, she speaks loudly without considering the feelings of the person opposite her. Living with her father-in-law with such a temperament led to no small number of conflicts. However, what surprised everyone was that Mr. Lamb never raised his voice at his daughter-in-law, and he never even sighed in complaint. He chose silence, not responding, not letting things escalate further. His silence was not resignation, but rather like a soft wall that caused the other's wave of anger to weaken by itself. Whenever there was a problem at home, instead of arguing directly, he would retreat to his room and open a small notebook. In that notebook, he would write a few short lines to remind himself to cultivate his mind. He didn't record his daughter-in-law's faults, nor did he list who was right or wrong. He only recorded his own state of mind and self-reminders, like keep a calm mind, or look deeply into the truth that everyone has their own suffering. That notebook became his companion, helping him remember that life is short, and anger only hurts the heart and makes days heavy. Then, one day, as usual, Ms. Thao was busy with housework and easily irritable. She said something that made the atmosphere in the house tense like a tightly pulled guitar string. Usually, Mr. Lamb would remain silent, but that day, Ms. Thao was louder than usual. She was not only annoyed, but also poured out long suppressed emotions into her words. In an uncontrollable moment, she shouted, "Why is my father-in-law always silent?" She asked, "Does he look down on me?" She asked why he never reacted, never spoke back, never showed his true feelings. These words were both an accusation and a cry for help from someone driven by emotions, not knowing how to escape. The house fell completely silent. Mr. Lamb's son stood still, not knowing whether to intervene or support his father. But Mr. Lamb looked at Ms. Thao with eyes as gentle as water. He was not blaming, not sad, not offended. He simply looked at his daughter-in-law like an elder looking at a child crying from exhaustion. Then he spoke in a voice so soft that in the quiet house it sounded like a gentle breeze passing through curtains. He said that he was not silent out of fear or neglect. He was silent to remind himself that when someone is angry, words can easily become sharp knives. He feared that if he spoke when his mind was not at peace, he would unintentionally hurt her. He preferred to keep a little annoyance in his heart rather than hurt her with unkind words. He wrote things down to cultivate himself, not to blame her. He just wanted every day he lived to be a day of learning a little more kindness. Hearing that, Ms. Thao felt as if someone had touched the deepest part of her soul. All her anger and resentment seemed to melt away. She burst into tears, not out of hurt, but because she realized how thoughtless she had been towards her father-in-law, who had always been so forgiving. His quietness, it turned out, was not weakness, but a strength she had never understood. She saw the small notebook in his hand and noticed that there wasn't a single line blaming her, only loving self-reproach and reminders to live better. She felt ashamed, realizing that all this time she had only seen her ego and not the heart of the one who had come before her. From that day on, the atmosphere in the house changed. Ms. Tao gradually learned to control her emotions and speak more gently. She knew that every time she got angry, she was the one losing her dignity. Meanwhile, Mr. Lamb always maintained his composure, which made anyone facing him feel a sense of calm. People say that happiness in a family doesn't come from those who speak well, but from those who know how to be forbearing. And one person who knows how to be forbearing can resolve an entire household. Mr. Lamb was such a person. When recalling Mr. Lamb's story, we can clearly see the Buddha's teachings illuminated in his every action. The Buddha once said, "The strongest person is not the one who wins in 1,000 battles, but the one who conquers oneself. Conquering oneself is many times harder than conquering others. For when facing others, we can brace ourselves. But when facing ourselves, we must truly look into the root of our own minds." The wise do not need to compete because they know that competition only hurts relationships and leaves wounds in the heart. And the kind person is one who uses quietness to nurture love. One gentle word, one peaceful home, one step back, blessings arise. These sayings seem simple, but they are the essence of cultivation in daily life. What makes it difficult for us to be forbearing is our overly large ego. We want others to understand us, but forget that we ourselves are not easy to understand. We want others to empathize with our fatigue, but rarely ask ourselves if they're tired. We want others to respect us, but use sharp words that hurt those facing us. And when emotions rise, strong as a storm, we hastily say things we don't truly mean. After the storm passes, we regret it, but words once uttered cannot be taken back. Forbearance is not surrender. Forbearance is holding back a moment so our mind can clearly see what is driving us. If it is anger, then know to stop. If it is pride, then know to let go. If it is love, then know to speak gently. When we know how to stop, how to let go, how to listen to the person opposite us, we will see everything become clear. When we know how to accept rightly, we lose nothing, but gain a lot. We gain others' respect, our own peace, and create a warm atmosphere at home. Family is where we see karma most clearly. Every word, every attitude, every action leaves an imprint on the hearts of loved ones. A gentle word can make a day light. A harsh word can make the whole family sad for a week. Forbearance is how we sow good seeds every day. And when those seeds are big enough, blessings will naturally come. No need for elaborate rituals, no need for grand ceremonies. Just a little kindness, a little stepping back, a little yielding to maintain harmony. And the family will be blessed. Mr. Lamb's story reminds us that in all relationships, what matters is not winning or losing, but maintaining peace. A person who knows forbearance is not weak, but strong enough not to let emotions control them. A person who knows how to step back is not a failure, but someone who sees one step further. And a person who knows how to be silent to avoid hurting others is someone sowing blessings for themselves and their entire family. If you are in a family with many conflicts, remember that just one person willing to change can alter the atmosphere. If you find yourself easily getting angry, remember that what makes people tired is not work, but uncalmed emotions. If you find it hard to be forbearing, try to think of Mr. Lamb's gentle eyes when facing his angry daughter-in-law. Just looking with those eyes, we will feel our hearts lighten. Practicing forbearance in life is not as difficult as we think. First, practice breathing before speaking. A deep breath is enough to pull us away from temporary emotions. Then, ask yourself if the words you are about to say will hurt anyone. If so, replace them with gentler words. Think that the person opposite you might be tired or going through something personal. When we see them as someone also under a lot of pressure, we will be more soft-hearted. And when we know how to be soft-hearted at the right time, we become stronger. Every evening before sleeping, we can do as Mr. Lamb did. Spend a few minutes jotting down our mood. No need to write down what happened, but only what we want to correct. For example, today I was a bit rushed, or spoke a bit loudly, or felt offended when receiving feedback. Write to remind ourselves, not to blame ourselves. Gradually, we will find our minds settling down more easily. A person who habitually self-reflects is someone who always maintains clarity in every action. Finally, understand that family is the best place for us to practice. No need to go to the mountains, no need to leave the world. Just by knowing how to live kindly every day, how to speak gently, how to be forbearing at the right time, and how to love correctly, blessings will naturally arise. A harmonious family is an invaluable asset. A kind father, a kind mother, children who know etiquette, a daughter-in-law who knows humility. Such a family, even if not wealthy, is full of blessings. And the one who sows such blessings sometimes just needs one person who knows how to be forbearing, like Mr. Lamb. One act of forbearance can preserve countless good things. One step of understanding can resolve countless storms. The peace we seek from outside actually begins from within, from the serenity we cultivate every day. When we know how to live this way, we will see that no need for competition, and the mind is still at peace. No need to prove anything, and the heart is still firm. No need to speak much, and others still feel our heart. One word of forbearance, a peaceful home, one step of understanding. Blessings arise. This is not just a teaching, but a path leading us to lasting joy. If we choose to walk this path from today, this life will be as light as clouds. Life is an unceasing flow, carrying countless changes, making the human heart sometimes light as the morning breeze, sometimes heavy as a cloud-covered sky. How many times have you asked yourself why some people view life with ease? Their faces always serene, undisturbed, no matter what happens? While for you, just one displeasing word is enough to make your heart feel utterly chaotic. Perhaps it's because each person carries an invisible bag. Those who know how to let go have light bags. Those who hold on to too much have bags so heavy they make their feet weary. Life is impermanent. All the things we stubbornly cling to may not last long. And the things we think we cannot let go of sometimes only require a moment of awakened awareness to be put down. In Buddhist teachings, the word let go Buong, does not mean abandonment or resignation. Letting go is not defeat or failure. Letting go is the power of a wise mind, realizing that what is no longer suitable should be allowed to go. Just as an arm cannot endlessly lift a heavy object, the heart also cannot forever cling to suffering, torment, or regret. Letting go at the right time is saving oneself from spiritual exhaustion. A boat overloaded with stones will sink, but if one knows how to discard unnecessary stones and keep only what is truly important, the boat will continue to float lightly. Humans are the same. Only by letting go of what no longer serves us can we continue to live more lightly. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha clearly pointed out that one of the causes of suffering is clinging. We cling to the past, refusing to let go. We grasp onto failures as if they were our identity. We cling to people who no longer wish to remain in our lives. We hold on to unfulfilled expectations, tormenting ourselves daily. All these things darken our minds. If we don't learn to let go, we will lose the peace that we inherently deserve. When we refuse to let go, we are the ones tightening the rope that binds us. A rope tied for too long causes pain, but if we know how to untie it, we will feel light. Letting go is the act of untying that rope. In reality, most human suffering does not come from external events, but from how we bind ourselves with heavy thoughts. Think about it. Haven't there been nights when we lay awake because of a careless remark someone made? Days when we were tired, just remembering an old event from years ago? Times when we felt useless just because of a failure? Even though that failure says nothing about our true worth, our mind is like a room. If we keep picking up all the fragments of life and throwing them in there, the room will be full, with no space for light to enter. But if we are willing to clear out what is no longer useful, that room will light up again. Many people say they cannot let go because they fear losing perseverance. But letting go is not giving up. Letting go is knowing the boundary between trying hard and hurting oneself. Some cling so tightly that their hands bleed, yet they stubbornly persist in vain. Others know to put down their burden to find peaceful breath again. Letting go at the right time is an expression of wisdom. Only when the mind is light does the path ahead become clear. The story of Tuan, a young man who was once deeply immersed in despair and then rose again by learning the two words letting go, is a testament to this. This story is not rare, for out there, countless young people carry great aspirations only to be crushed by reality. But the way Tuan got back up is what we should ponder. Tuan came from an ordinary family and dreamed of becoming an entrepreneur very early on. When he was old enough to work, Tuan saved up a little capital and decided to open a small coffee shop. He believed that with hard work, effort, and passion, everything would go smoothly. However, reality was harsher than he imagined. The coffee shop had few customers, the location wasn't great, and he lacked management experience. Tuan started losing money. He tried to change the menu, redecorate the shop, stayed up late, and woke up early every day to see if more customers would come. But the results didn't improve. As debts mounted, Tuan became frantic. He constantly blamed himself, asking why he was so thoughtless, why he took such risks, why everything fell apart. Every day, Tuan lived with a sense of guilt and shame. He feared the gazes of those around him, feared questions about whether the shop was still open, and even feared looking at himself in the mirror. The more he thought, the more desperate Tuan became. His mind became a repository of negative thoughts. He sank into depression without realizing it. There were days Tuan didn't want to leave the house, didn't want to see anyone, didn't want to talk to anyone. He kept his phone on silent and lay for hours staring at the ceiling. He felt like the whole world was turning its back on him. Meals no longer tasted good. Sleep was no longer peaceful. He felt like a failure as a son for worrying his parents, a failure as a man for not being able to pursue his own dream, a failure as an adult. One day, Tuan's uncle visited and saw his nephew's pale face and trembling hands. The uncle knew Tuan was at the bottom of his suffering. He didn't scold, analyze, or lecture. He just gently told Tuan to come with him to the pagoda. Tuan didn't want to go, but out of respect for his uncle, he complied. It was a windy morning, with soft sunlight filtering through the trees. The pagoda was on a small hill, so quiet you could hear the sound of leaves brushing against each other. The atmosphere made Tuan feel a little calmer. When he met the abbot, Tuan could only say, "I'm ruined." The master looked at him as if looking at someone carrying too many stones in his heart. He didn't ask Tuan how much money he had lost, why his business failed, or about his future plans. He only asked Tuan if he was tired. That question made Tuan burst into tears. It had been a long time since anyone had asked him that. People only asked why he lost money, why he didn't try harder, why he didn't plan more carefully. But the master asked a question that touched the softest part of his heart. After letting Tuan sit quietly for a while, the master said that people suffer not because they lose money, but because they cannot bear the feeling of losing money. Not because of failure, but because they cannot accept failure. What hurts Tuan is not the coffee shop closing, but the shame of feeling inferior to others. The master said, "You are trapped in a dark room that you yourself locked. The key is also in your hand. As soon as you are willing to let go, the door will open." Tuan asked the master, "How can I let go when I've lost everything?" The master smiled and said, "Letting go is not losing. Letting go is saving yourself. Letting go is seeing things as they truly are. Letting go is freeing your mind from being so tight that it can't breathe. If you keep holding on to that failure like a hot stone, you will burn your hand. But if you put that stone down, you will no longer hurt, not because the stone disappears, but because you are no longer holding it." The master taught Tuan a simple meditation exercise. Breathing in, I let go of what I don't need to carry. Breathing out, I am light as the sky's clouds. Just like that, Tuan felt something release in his chest. He realized that all this time he had forced himself to carry too much. He thought he had to be strong and overcome. But the harder he tried, the more exhausted he became. He didn't understand that sometimes the greatest strength is daring to let go. From that day on, Tuan practiced letting go, little by little. Letting go of self-blame. Letting go of the thought that he was inferior. Letting go of the fear of being judged by others. Letting go of the questions of why he failed. Letting go of overly high expectations for himself. And even letting go of his anger at himself for making mistakes. Tuan looked at everything with a different mindset. He saw that he had learned many things from that failure: how to manage money, how to observe the market, how to be more humble. He understood that not everyone succeeds on the first try. Even famous entrepreneurs around the world had gone bankrupt many times before finding the right path. They didn't see failure as an end, but as a valuable lesson. As Tuan's mind gradually lightened, he realized he still had many capabilities. He found a new job, starting with shipping. The job seemed small, but helped Tuan feel useful. He no longer cared about what others thought of his profession. He was just happy to have work every day and earn money through honest labor. With a stable mind, Tuan worked harder than before. He was happy to meet many people, go to many places, and feel life moving. Gradually, Tuan had a stable income. An unexpected opportunity arose when the delivery company appreciated his diligence and offered him a small team leader position, something Tuan himself never expected. When Tuan recounted his story, he said that the day he let go of the feeling of failure was also the day his life changed. He no longer saw failure as a humiliation, but as an experience that helped him grow. And when his mind became light, his path in life naturally brightened. The Buddhist teachings are often very simple, yet have a profound impact. The Buddha once said that all suffering begins with attachment. When we can let go of one thing, we become lighter by that much. When we can let go of many things, our minds will be as vast as the sky. A person who knows how to let go is not weak. A person who knows how to let go understands that holding on to what is no longer suitable only causes more pain. The one who doesn't let go is the one who truly loses. And the one who lets go at the right time is the wise one. Looking back at life, we will see that we have also often held on to things that should have been let go of. We hold on to an unhappy relationship forever. We stubbornly cling to a job that exhausts us. We embrace old mistakes instead of looking forward. We cling to what others say, even if they say it in anger. We keep revolving in a cycle of resentment, only to be the one who suffers the most. Letting go is not easy, but once we are able to let go, we realize that it is much lighter than we imagined. Practicing letting go in daily life is not something far-fetched. Sometimes it only requires sitting for a few minutes to breathe deeply. As you breathe in, visualize worries leaving your body and mind. As you breathe out, allow peace to spread throughout your being. Each day, we can ask ourselves, is what I am holding on to truly necessary? If not, give it an exit. If a relationship is too tiring, step back a little to look from a distance. If work is too stressful, give yourself a break to recover. If a mistake feels too heavy, forgive yourself. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. When we know how to let go, our minds will become awed, and a soft mind can truly receive happiness. Life will no longer be a burden, but become a lighter journey. Remember that letting go at the right time is wisdom. When the mind is light, the path of life naturally brightens like morning sun after rain. Life is inherently a journey where everything changes daily, like drifting clouds that never stand still. The blessed today may not remain so tomorrow. Those suffering now, who knows, might turn a new page tomorrow. In this impermanent world, we constantly chase after winning and losing, forgetting that our mind is what determines everything. Life is like water. The more you struggle, the more tired you become. the more you learn to go with the flow, the lighter you feel. There will be times when you realize that what hurts you is not what happens externally, but the resistance, struggle, and reactions from your own mind. When your heart is uneasy, even standing under a beautiful sunny sky, you still feel sad. But when your heart is at peace, even in the rain, you can still smile. Everything in life is temporary. Even pain is just like a passing guest. What remains, after all, is how we live, how we treat others, and the silent merit we sow. A gentle life may not make you rich quickly, but it makes life peaceful, family warm, and children and grandchildren harmonious. That is something money cannot buy, and no one can compete for. In Buddhist teachings, impermanence is regarded as the breath of the universe. Everything comes and goes according to conditions. Some people meet with suffering and become angry. Some people suffer injustice, yet still keep a smile. Some people are oppressed by life, but their minds remain undisturbed. Such people naturally blossom with blessings, like a tree receiving rain. People often ask why some individuals never do anything grand, yet their children and grandchildren are kind, their studies go smoothly, and their careers are successful. The Buddha taught that karma is not in noisy deeds, but in every small action each day. Silent goodness is always as enduring as the earth. The hidden merit a person leaves behind is often greater than an entire fortune. Perhaps that is why, when we look at life, we see that most human suffering does not come from poverty or lack, but from comparison, anger, and attachment. People suffer because they see others as better than themselves. People get angry because someone says something they dislike. People are sad because of a little gossip. And from these small things, the mind is no longer at peace. Emotions are pulled like an invisible string. Every time anger arises, it is a loss of blessing. Every time resentment occurs, it is closing the door to one's own joy. The truth is that no one suffers from the words of others, but only suffers because they are not magnanimous enough to let go. When we understand our mind, we will see that every storm begins with a thought, and when a thought arises, all darkness in the heart dissipates. In the market of life, where people come and go as numerous as a festival, simple stories can contain a treasure trove of wisdom. There is a story about a mother that the Zen Buddhist channel wants to share. The story is very ordinary, but makes anyone who hears it feel their heart settle. This mother's name is Thu. Everyone in the market knows her. From vegetable and fish vendors to motorbike taxi drivers at the gate, they all know her. Ms. Thu has been carrying banh mi for 20 years. 20 years is not long, but it's enough to transform a young woman struggling to make a living into an old mother with hands full of cracks. Rain or shine, she rides her old bicycle to a small corner at the market entrance, setting out her simple cart, a small charcoal stove, and hot, fragrant banh mi. She doesn't talk much, always wears a gentle smile, and softly asks customers what kind they want. Sometimes the market is crowded, and she can't keep up. But she still maintains her calm demeanor, soft as water. People love her for that. Customers come to her not just to eat, but as if to find comfort. Because there are days they are tired, and just a gentle smile is enough to lighten their hearts. Her life was peaceful like that until a new banh mi stall opened right next to hers. The owner was younger, more articulate, and made all sorts of flavors to attract customers. There was nothing wrong with that, as business is competition. But what surprised many people in the market was how they treated Ms. Thu. At first, it was just veiled remarks like her bread wasn't clean, her meat wasn't fresh. Then came direct accusations. Once, the new owner looked directly at a customer standing in front of Ms. Thu's stall and told them not to buy from her because she used unreliable meat. Ms. Thu heard it, just turned and smiled. A sad but unresentful smile. People in the market said if it were them, they would have been very upset. But she just said that everyone has to make a living. The others are younger, more agile, and started later, so they have to win customers. That's normal. If you're good, heaven knows. After saying that, she bent down to make another banh mi, slowly, as if not wanting her mind to be disturbed. But things didn't stop there. One rainy afternoon, as she was packing up, 2 food hygiene officials came to inspect. They said someone reported that her banh mi stall used spoiled ingredients. Everyone in the market understood who made the report. Never in her life had she been so unjustly accused. She just smiled. After the inspection, all the ingredients were clean. She said, "I'm old now. I will earn enough to live, no matter how much I sell. There's no reason for me to do anything unethical to harm others' health." The officials just nodded and left. At that moment, many thought she would be angry, cry, or say something bitter. But no, she just continued to wipe her counter, light her stove, ready to sell the remaining banh mi. She said that if people accuse you falsely, you must live in such a way that the injustice dissipates by itself. She believed that if she was gentle, heaven would balance things out. Sometime later, something strange happened. Her customers didn't decrease, but actually increased. Many people had heard the malicious rumors, but knowing her character, they loved her even more and came to buy to support her. Some customers, who had never known her before, upon hearing the story, also came to buy a small banh mi, as if to show their respect for her kindness. People say that being too kind makes one easily bullied, but Ms. Thu's case showed that a kind person is not weak. A kind person is like the earth. The earth doesn't argue, doesn't react, just lies there enduring sun, rain, and even footsteps. Yet, when needed, the earth nourishes green trees and fruits. A kind person accumulates hidden merit, a blessing that no gold or silver can compare to. Ms. Thu's son is an example of that blessing. The day he got accepted into university, she cried a lot out of joy, not from pressure or a desire for her son to be as successful as this or that person, but because she felt that heaven and earth had been kind to her. He finished his studies, got a stable job, married a kind wife, and lived very filial. Whenever anyone asked her secret to raising children, she would just smile. She said, "I don't know much about raising children. I just live true to my heart. If I am kind, my children will benefit." Everyone in the market heard that and understood, because no one could fail to see how obedient and kind her son was. In Buddhist scriptures, there is a beautiful verse. One who sows good karma is like a shadow following a form. Though slow, it surely comes. Goodness does not need to be boasted about in words because it shines by its actions. The Buddha did not teach us to endure suffering or loss, but taught that in all situations, keep our minds from being drawn into others' negativity. If others are angry, it doesn't mean we have to be angry. If others speak wrongly, it doesn't mean we have to retaliate to please them. When our minds maintain peace, blessings will naturally open like a lotus in the mud. The ancient masters also said, "One wholesome thought arises, 100 good things follow. One act of forbearance, 1,000 misfortunes are avoided." The ancients understood the way, so they lived like the passing wind. People today understand life, so they live like flowing water. A person who knows how to keep a kind mind is like keeping the roots of a tree. The stronger the roots, the better the flowers and fruits. Ms. Thu's story makes many people reflect on how they face injustice in life. In truth, everyone wants to be respected and recognized. When misunderstood, everyone feels sad. But if we lose sleep and appetite just because of someone else's words, we are giving away the key to our own happiness to them. A kind person lives not out of fear, but because they understand that anger only impoverishes them, while serenity enriches them. Rich not in money, but rich in peace of mind, fewer afflictions, and better sleep than others. Life has many things we cannot control, but our minds we can control. Hidden merit, amduk, is actually the most enduring shadow a person leaves in life. It is not noisy, not colorful, but silently protects us. Ms. Thu did not ask for much. She just lived well every day. And naturally, her children were blessed. People in the market believed it, and I believe it more than anything else. Because there are too many examples in life showing that kind people meet with good fortune. Even if good fortune comes a little late, it never fails to come. One who doesn't argue, heaven argues for them. One who doesn't contend, the earth stands with them. One who lives like the earth, heaven naturally becomes kind. So, when looking back at the story of the banh mi vendor mother, we learn that it's not by being loud that one wins. It's not by competing that one retains. The most important thing is whether one's heart remains clear. When the heart darkens, even if one wins over others, there is no joy. When the heart is clear, even if one suffers a small loss, it doesn't matter. We cannot change how others treat us, but we can choose how we live. A kind person lives not to be loved by others, but for their own peace of mind. That peace is the true blessing. When we live kindly, heaven becomes kind. When we live well, life naturally softens. All these are not theories, but experiences of countless people like Ms. Thu. A small banh mi stall, a kind mother, a decent life have said it all. If you are going through something unpleasant, being misunderstood, or being treated badly by someone, remember this story. Try for once not to react instinctively, but to pause and see how your mind is. Ask yourself if you need to be so sad. Do you need to keep those words in your heart? Remember the Buddha's teaching that suffering does not come from the event itself, but from how we perceive the event. When we change our perspective, sadness will naturally fall away. When we gently let go of something, heaven and earth will return to us a corresponding good thing. Living kindly is not to prove ourselves right, but so our hearts are no longer heavy. Just live well every day. Whatever others do, let them be. In the end, our own mind is the most precious thing to preserve. This life is inherently an endless flow of changes, where nothing is fixed. From the weather, work, to each person's mood, everything changes daily. The impermanence of life forces everyone to learn to adapt and accept. What we consider certain today may become something completely different tomorrow. But there is one thing that seems to change the least in humans: the habit of judgment. Humans have a very strange instinct. They prefer to look at others' flaws rather than look at themselves. They can spend hours analyzing someone's mistakes, but cannot spare a minute to examine what their own mind contains. Every time the judging mind arises, it is like an invisible cage trapping us in negative emotions. And then we keep thinking we are right, we are good, we are helping others improve. But in reality, we are driving our minds further away from the inherent peace. Impermanence teaches us that everything changes. Even our perceptions of others cannot be correct forever. Today, we think someone is like this, but tomorrow, they might be different. We see them through our own lens, so it is hard to avoid distortions. It's like looking at a glass of water through the light of a sunset. The reflection makes us think the water is murky, but in reality, it's just the light distorting the image. Humans also do this when looking at others, often being obscured by preconceptions, personal experiences, habits, and temporary emotions. Therefore, judgment becomes a form of mental illusion. It does not reflect the truth, but only reflects our own unrefined mind. When we understand this, we will know why in Buddhism, judgment is considered one of the roots of suffering. The problem of the judging mind is explained very clearly in Buddhist teachings. The Buddha once taught that one who looks at the faults of others is like a person walking in the dark, holding a lamp pointing straight at others, forgetting that behind them there is also a shadow. One who only sees the faults of others is allowing their mind to be led by ignorance. When we judge, we create karma with our words, with our thoughts, with our attitude. This not only affects the person being judged, but also directly harms our own mind. Buddhism holds that judgment arises from ego clinging, from an overly large ego that refuses to be humble. The stronger the ego, the easier it is to see others' faults. The weaker the ego, the easier it is to see one's own faults. Therefore, judgment makes the mind narrow, like a sealed room without windows. Even if the sun shines brightly outside, the person living inside cannot see it. Judgment is a mental shackles that bind us without our knowing. When analyzing human psychology deeper, we will see that judging behavior is not merely a habit, but also a way the mind protects itself. When we see others' faults, we feel as if we are in a higher, safer, and more valuable position. This brings a short-term sense of self-confidence, but creates long-term insecurity. Because every time we see someone else's fault, we unintentionally place ourselves in a comparative relationship. And once we compare, there must be a winner and a loser. When we see others make mistakes, we feel we are right. But when we see others excel, we feel inferior. This very mechanism creates never-ending internal pressure. People who judge a lot often struggle to find joy and happiness because their minds are always engaged in defense or evaluation. They don't know that judging is like holding a hot coal in one's hand. If thrown at someone, that person gets hurt first, then it's your turn. But if you don't throw it, the one who hurts first is the one holding it. That's why there's a saying that a thoughtless word can hurt others for a lifetime. The speaker sometimes only utters a superficial remark, but the listener can carry that sadness for a lifetime. As for the speaker's mind, each time they judge, they create a scratch on themselves. In modern life, the judging mind appears even more easily. Social media exposes everything, and comments and evaluations become daily habits. People look at others' success and say they got lucky without knowing how many sleepless nights they went through. People look at a sad status update and judge that person as weak, without knowing what loss they just experienced. People look at someone studying abroad and say they live a life of pleasure, without knowing the years of effort behind it. People look at Warren Buffett and say he's rich by fate, forgetting that he spent almost his entire life reading and learning. The judging mind makes people see only the surface, not the depth. It's like looking at the surface of a lake and trying to guess its depth. That can never be accurate. And that is why, in spiritual practice, stopping judgment is a very important step. Buddhism teaches that cultivation is not about becoming better than others, but about becoming better than oneself. When we meditate, we don't meditate to scrutinize others, but to reflect on our own minds. But not everyone understands that. Some people learn meditation, but don't use it to observe their inner self. Instead, they use it as a tool to judge others more clearly. And Miss Ngok's story is one such example. This story sounds very mundane, but serves as a wake-up call for many. Miss Ngok is an office worker. She was under pressure from work, family, and relationships around her. For a long time, she suffered from insomnia, was constantly stressed, easily lost her temper, and especially often found fault with others. At work, she was annoyed with colleagues. At home, she was annoyed with her husband and children, always feeling that people weren't doing things her way. Then one day, she decided to attend a short meditation retreat, hoping to find peace. Initially, she was very enthusiastic. She diligently took notes, meditated regularly, and participated in sharing sessions with the teacher. But instead of using meditation to look at the storms within her own mind, she used it to judge others more and more clearly. She thought she was practicing well, becoming awakened, but in reality, her ego was growing larger. She began to criticize her family more, especially her husband. She said her husband was ignorant, didn't understand the Dharma, and lived carelessly. She said her colleagues didn't know how to control their emotions, didn't know how to cultivate their minds and characters. Every day, she became louder, more severe, making her family feel stifled. Her son, who was in middle school, was also constantly scolded by her about his attitude, grades, and way of life. She said she was training her child, helping him to be better. But in fact, she was making her child's heart increasingly fearful. One day in the meditation class, the teacher looked at her and asked very gently, "Whom do you meditate to see?" A simple question, but it struck the deepest part of her heart. She froze. In that moment, she realized she had never truly looked at herself. She meditated to see her husband's faults, her son's faults, her colleagues' faults. She meditated to reinforce her judgments of others. She meditated to prove that she understood life better than others. but she had never meditated to look at the uneasiness in her own heart. She had never asked why she got upset every time someone else made a mistake. She had never asked why she was so easily hurt. The teacher only asked one question, but it awakened her. She understood that she was living in a prison of her own making, a prison of judgment. The more she judged others, the more she was imprisoned. After that class, she went home and tried what the teacher taught. Instead of looking outward, she looked inward. She realized that for years, she had always been afraid of being judged, so she judged others first. She was afraid of being looked down upon, so she always demanded perfection from others. She feared not being good enough, so she scrutinized others' faults to feel elevated. All these behaviors stemmed from the insecurity in her heart. When she understood that, she cried a lot. Not crying from regret, but crying because, finally, she saw the root of the pain she had created for herself. She suddenly understood that cultivation is looking back at one's own mind, not looking at others' faults. From that day, she began to change. She no longer scolded her husband and children in a judgmental way. She learned to listen, share, and be patient. She practiced observing her own reactions before speaking. And strangely, as she changed, her family also changed. In Buddhist scriptures, there is a passage that says, "The judging mind is like a person standing outside a door, constantly watching to see who goes right and who goes wrong." Such a person unintentionally no longer lives for themselves, but lives to distinguish and compare. One who sees others' faults is one who forgets that they also have faults. One who always points fingers at others has never once looked into their own mind. The Buddha taught that if everyone knew how to look at their own faults, there would be no more disputes in the world. A person who practices will never find joy in judging. They understand that everyone carries their own suffering, so if they cannot help each other, they should not burden each other. A critical word can cause someone to carry sadness for a lifetime. A thoughtless word can hurt others forever. Therefore, in Buddhism, words need to be cherished like a lotus. In the Dhammapada, there's a famous saying, "If one always looks at others' faults, always seeks faults, the mind will never be at peace." This is meant to remind us that our own peace depends on whether we focus outward or inward. When reflecting on the lesson from Ms. Ngok's story, we see clearly that judging others never solves problems, but only makes our minds heavier. The judged person may suffer, but the judging person suffers the most. Because each time one judges, the mind generates affliction. Judgment is like grinding a stone on the heart. The more it grinds, the more hardened and rigid the heart becomes. A person who judges for a long time will lose gentleness, lose the ability to empathize and understand. They will become cold, difficult, and always feel lonely. Because no one wants to be near someone who always looks at them with judging eyes. Conversely, when we learn to look at others with compassion, we will feel our hearts lighten like a leaf. We are no longer drawn into others' negativity and do not hurt anyone. Our hearts become more spacious and warmer. Everyone has their own path, their own suffering, and their own lessons. No one is exactly alike, and no one fully understands another's story. Therefore, judgment is merely an action based on superficial and partial knowledge. A practitioner needs to understand that practice is not about becoming perfect in others' eyes. Practice is about clearly seeing one's own mind, mastering emotions, knowing when to stop before saying something hurtful. Practice is cleaning the house of the mind, clearing away annoyance, self-pride, and prejudice. When the mind is clean, life also becomes light. The healing message here is a reminder that each of us has the right to choose how we live. We can choose to live in the prison of judgment, or choose to live in the freedom of compassion. Every day, spend a few minutes sitting still and asking yourself if your mind is at peace today. Whenever you want to judge someone, pause and ask yourself if you are sure you understand their entire story. Remind yourself that you, too, have made mistakes, have been weak, have been clumsy. When you remember that, you will be gentler with others and with yourself. And when the mind is at peace, afflictions naturally dissipate. The kinder the mind, the kinder life becomes. Living well every day is not to be praised by anyone, but to sleep well, to feel light-hearted, to live truly peacefully amidst a life full of ups and downs. If we look deeply into this life, we will see it is like flowing water. No one knows what the next bend holds: rocks, deep pools, or a flat, calm plain. Humans always want everything to go their way. They want the path to be straight, the sky to be beautiful, everything to be smooth. But life doesn't operate according to anyone's desires. Impermanence is its nature. Everything changes, hour by hour, day by day, breath by breath. What we consider certain today may vanish tomorrow. What we try to hold on to tightly sometimes slips from our grasp in an instant. When we understand this, we begin to realize that living in harmony with conditions is not passive surrender, but knowing how to blend with the natural flow of cause and effect, so that the mind can be light and life can be peaceful. From childhood to adulthood, we are taught that to get what we want, we must strive, make an effort, rise up and achieve it. But few teach us that there are things that the more we try, the more we lose, the more we cling, the more we hurt, the more we force, the more tired we become. The Buddha taught that everything in life arises from causes and conditions. When conditions are sufficient, it comes. When conditions end, it goes. Forcing things is like trying to hold the wind in your hand. The tighter you clench, the faster the wind escapes. But when you relax, the wind gently passes by, cool and serene. Modern life keeps people in a great vortex of desires. We wish for quick career success, for ideal relationships, for our children to follow our wishes, for perfect health, for life to always be smooth. But the more we wish, the more easily we get tired when things deviate from our plans. A common human tendency is to always believe we must control everything. When we fall into a state of excessive control, we start to tense up, pushing ourselves into stress, annoyance, and disappointment. This is the root cause of an unpeaceful mind and a heavy life. One of the reasons we suffer is because we do not accept change. We want everything to stand still according to our will. But life is inherently like water. Water meets a rock. It detours. Meets soil. It seeps. Meets a cliff. It pauses, accumulates, and then flows on. No matter how circumstances change, water maintains its soft and calm nature. Water does not fight the rock, nor does it force its way through what cannot be overcome. Water simply flows with its own conditions. Humans, on the other hand, constantly want to force life to follow their plans, want circumstances to align with personal desires. When life doesn't go our way, we get afflicted. When people don't follow us, we get annoyed. When things don't go our way, we get disappointed. That is the suffering stemming from forcing things. In Buddhism, forcing things is a form of attachment. Attachment to one's own will, attachment to expectations, attachment to results, attachment to what one believes is right. When attachment is strong, the mind becomes rigid. A rigid mind is difficult to contain, difficult to let go, and difficult to be at peace. A person who knows how to live in harmony with conditions is different. They do not abandon responsibility, but they know how to let go of stubborn attachment. They do not live passively, but they do not force life. They do their best and then let everything unfold according to conditions. They are like water, soft yet strong, flexible yet not aimlessly swept away. They understand that every event has its own time. It doesn't come early, doesn't come late. It only comes precisely when conditions are sufficient. The human mind often reacts similarly to failure. When things don't go as desired, we tend to blame ourselves, life, or others. But in reality, many things are beyond individual control. We can only sow seeds, while the conditions and results depend on many other factors. Farmers can cultivate their fields very well, but the weather is something no one can control. Business people can plan meticulously, but market changes are not something an individual can manipulate. People in love can be sincere, but whether the other's feelings are deep or not is not up to us to decide. Understanding this, the mind begins to release tension and opens up the path of true spiritual learning. That is learning how to behave harmoniously in all circumstances. The story of Mr. Trong, the pomelo farmer who lived in harmony with conditions, is a gentle yet profound testament to this spirit. Mr. Trong lived in a rural area of the Mekong Delta, connected to his pomelo garden behind his house his entire life. He cared for his trees with a kind heart and lived like the pomelo tree, naturally, without forcing anything. One year, it rained continuously for many months, and nearly all the young pomelo fruits fell. Many orchard owners complained to the heavens, watching their months of hard work wash away with the water, their hearts aching. Everyone was worried and feared a bad harvest. But Mr. Trong was different. He looked at the falling rain and nodded, a gentle smile on his face, just like someone accustomed to the changes of heaven and earth. Neighbors ran over to ask why he wasn't worried. He just gently replied, "Plenty of water helps the roots grow. The fruit may fall this year, but next year the trees will be healthier, and the fruit will be tastier." He wasn't saying this to console himself. He truly lived in the spirit of accepting conditions. He understood that this year's rain was beyond his control. He also understood that nature has its own cycles. Trees sometimes bear abundant fruit, and sometimes rest to prepare for the next season. Mr. Trong didn't try to hold on to what had fallen. He wasn't annoyed, didn't blame the sky, didn't force the trees to bear fruit according to his wishes. He let the trees live naturally, and he let his heart settle naturally too. The following year, indeed, his pomelo garden had a bountiful harvest. Large fruits, beautiful skins, sweet and fragrant flesh. People said he was lucky, but he just smiled. The monk near the pagoda, seeing this, also simply said that Mr. Trong was blessed because he knew how to go with his conditions. This story makes us think a lot about how we face life. Sometimes we try to the point of exhaustion, trying to hold on to things we cannot keep, trying to achieve things against nature. But the harder we try, the more we suffer. It's like someone walking against the wind. The more they resist, the more tired they get. But when they turn and go with the wind, it naturally, gently pushes them further. Living in harmony with conditions is like that. It's not doing nothing, but doing what needs to be done at the right time, then letting everything unfold in the best possible way. In Buddhist scriptures, there are many passages teaching us about the spirit of harmony with conditions and non-seeking. The Buddha once said that one who knows how to live without desire or craving has a heart as light as clouds, not seeking fame, not seeking profit, not seeking everything to go their way, only doing what is in accordance with righteousness and letting the results come naturally. In another sutra, the Buddha taught that to be at peace, one must be in harmony. Harmony is not about blindly following, but understanding the nature of impendent origination so as not to create more suffering for oneself. Everything is formed by the harmonious coming together of causes and conditions. When conditions meet, it exists. When conditions dissipate, it disappears. Looking at things this way, we realize that stubborn attachment only increases suffering and brings nothing. From these words, we can draw the lesson that life operates according to causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently. A pomelo tree needs not only a caretaker to bear fruit, but also sun, rain, soil, and wind. Humans need not only personal effort to succeed, but also timing, environment, opportunities, and the help of others. Therefore, when we understand that we are just one part of the vast totality of dependent origination, we will be less rigid, less constrained, and less insistent that everything must go our way. Then the mind will naturally lighten. The greatest lesson of living in harmony with conditions is letting go of rigid expectations. When we know that not everything needs to be controlled, not every condition needs to be clung to, not every outcome needs to be forced, we begin to live more freely. What is valuable is that when the mind is not forcing things, we are more likely to achieve good things. Because when the mind is at peace, wisdom is clear. When wisdom is clear, things go smoothly. But when the mind is confused, worried, or rushed, we are prone to acting wrongly, easily giving rise to anger, and easily creating bad karma. The healing message of this section is to learn to go with the flow of conditions. Instead of forcing life, we can start by observing daily life. When things don't go our way, instead of reacting immediately with annoyance or disappointment, try asking ourselves, is this within my ability to change? If yes, we adjust. If no, we accept and find the most skillful way to act in that circumstance. When opportunities arise, we cherish and seize them. When conditions end, we smile and gently let go. Let the mind be like water, soft yet strong, flexible yet without losing its beautiful nature. When we live in harmony with conditions, we are no longer swayed by life's changes. We no longer compare, no longer envy, no longer resent. We simply live fully in the present and cultivate wholesome seeds in our minds. That is also how to live well every day without having to compete or compare with anyone. When the mind is at peace, afflictions naturally dissipate. When we know how to let go of what needs to be released and hold on to what is worth keeping, we will find that life is not difficult at all. It is just waiting for us to open our hearts to understand that living in harmony with conditions is always the lightest path. Living like flowing water, tranquil and complete. That is what practitioners in this life always strive for. There are days when we open our eyes and feel like everything is spinning too fast. This era makes people live in a constant rush. Rushing at work, rushing to eat, rushing to speak, rushing to draw conclusions, rushing to react to feedback, rushing to judge someone they don't fully understand. And amidst all that hustle, we forget that our breath is still happening within our bodies every second. That time waits for no one, but also never rushes anyone. It flows silently while we run. At some point, when we are tired, we suddenly realize that haste is sometimes not because of work, but because our own mind cannot stay still. Impermanent life has always reminded us that nothing is certain. Everything changes every moment. Just one stray thought, one uncontrolled word, one unconscious action, and we can cause harm to others. And then we ourselves sink into sorrow. On an ordinary day, we assume we do nothing wrong. But if we look deeply, we will see how many times we judge. Judging someone walking slowly on the road. Judging a colleague who didn't do something our way. Judging a person by their attire, by an incomplete sentence. Judging even things unrelated to our own lives. These seemingly harmless judgments are the root cause of an uneasy mind. Buddhism calls these agitated thoughts. The moment a thought arises, the mind is already disturbed. A disturbed mind is no longer mindful enough to realize what it is doing. At that point, we easily get angry, easily overreact, easily say things that we will later regret. Many people always ask why their lives are so full of afflictions. But few are willing to reflect on how many unwholesome thoughts their minds have unconsciously created each day. According to the Buddha's teachings, the human mind constantly fluctuates between wholesome and unwholesome thoughts. As soon as a bad thought arises, karma has already begun to be sown. A thought of anger can lead to words that hurt others. An uncontrolled word can lead to wrong actions. From those actions, consequences follow, making the mind increasingly heavy. Thus, one wrong thought gives rise to countless sufferings. Conversely, one wholesome thought can help us stop an entire chain of bad karma. Restraining oneself from speaking angry words once can avoid conflict. A deep breath before reacting can preserve harmony. A thought of compassion for others can help us reduce anger. That is why the masters often reminded us that one wrong thought creates a myriad of suffering lifetimes. One wholesome thought creates a myriad of peaceful lifetimes. This saying is not meant to intimidate anyone, but to remind practitioners. Even just one thought in the mind can change the entire flow of life. People often don't realize that they let their minds chase after reactions too much. When someone says something contrary to their opinion, they immediately react. When a tiny problem arises, they immediately get angry. When someone is a beat slow, they immediately judge. This very quick reaction prevents the mind from ever having a chance to settle down. If the mind doesn't settle, it can't see clearly. If the mind doesn't see clearly, all behavior is based on instinct and habit, not on wisdom or compassion. This is why many people are tired their entire lives without knowing why. To understand this better, let's look at the story of Min. Min is a young delivery man living in a bustling city. His job requires him to be on the road all day. Work pressure often makes him stressed. If a customer changes the delivery time, Min can get angry immediately. When stuck in traffic, he gets so annoyed he curses. If someone asks an ill-timed question, he immediately snaps back. Min says he doesn't want to be like that, but can't help it. In fact, Min is just living unconsciously. Every action of his is an automatic reaction from long accumulated angry thoughts. He has never paused to look within himself, never asked why he gets so irritable, never tried to slow down a beat. One day, during a break, Min accidentally saw a quote online. It read, "One wrong thought creates a myriad of suffering lifetimes. One wholesome thought creates a myriad of peaceful lifetimes." After reading it, Min felt something resonate within him. He thought that perhaps he himself had let his mind chase after too many negative thoughts. He suddenly wanted to try to change. For the first time in a long while, he sat still for a moment and observed his breath. He realized that whenever he got angry, his breathing was very rapid. When his breath was rapid, his heart beat fast. His mind was agitated, and his mouth spoke thoughtless words. Min decided to try something he had never done before: live slowly for one day, just one day, to see what would happen. The next day, when a customer reported changing the time, Min was about to get angry, but he suddenly remembered yesterday's quote. He paused for a second, took a deep breath, and then replied gently, "No problem." He felt he lost nothing. It was still a delivery, but his mind felt lighter. When stuck in traffic, he tried not to honk continuously as usual. He just breathed and observed. He realized that his previous annoyance only made him more tired. He had never looked at that before. When others spoke loudly, he didn't react immediately. He let a few seconds pass before responding. Little by little, Min realized his mind was different from before. He persevered for a month, and strangely enough, just 1 month of mindfulness helped him change his whole life. He got angry less often, his work went more smoothly, and customers appreciated him more. Min no longer felt like he always had to battle life. He felt as if he was floating in a calm current, slow but steady, peaceful and clear. What changed was not life, but how Min looked at life. From Min's story, we see that mindfulness is not something profound. It begins simply by looking back at one's own mind. In Buddhism, mindfulness means being aware of what one is thinking, saying, and doing. When we are aware, we no longer react unconsciously, but have enough clarity to choose. The Buddha taught that the mind is like a monkey, jumping from branch to branch, never staying still. To tame it, one must observe it. If we do not observe, the mind will lead us. If we observe, we will lead the mind. This is a crucial point on the journey to finding inner peace. In many sutras, the Buddha reminded us that the root of suffering does not come from others or from life, but from a mind lacking mindfulness. People often say that external circumstances make them suffer. But in reality, it's because the mind isn't strong enough to stand firm against external circumstances. People say that someone makes them angry, but in reality, it's because there's still anger within. Someone else's words only touch the anger already present in us. If there is no anger, those words are just sounds passing by. Therefore, the masters taught, look back at the mind before looking at the world. When the mind is clear, life naturally becomes clear. The lesson of this section is to slow down and observe yourself in every small thing. Many people think that only big events require mindfulness, but in fact, small things are what truly matter. How we react when someone says something wrong, how we behave when things don't go our way, how we face discomfort. These things create our inner life every day. When we are mindful in small things, the mind grows stronger every day. When the mind is strong, we can overcome storms without having to strain ourselves. The healing message here is to give yourself a chance to live authentically. Don't let life sweep you away so fast that your mind has no room to breathe. Practice slowing down a little. Before speaking, breathe. Before getting angry, listen. Before judging, observe. When we live with mindfulness, we will find the world gentler, people more lovable, and ourselves more at ease. When we are fully present in every moment, we truly live. And we will understand that one day of mindfulness can change a lifetime. This life inherently operates by the law of constant change, from the morning breeze, the pattering afternoon rain, to the fleeting smile that quickly fades on a stranger's face on the street. All remind us that nothing lasts forever. Just as this morning, the sun shines brightly, but by afternoon, gray clouds may fill the sky. Humans are also like this, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, sometimes peaceful, sometimes stormy. For this reason, many wise teachers in the East always remind us that instead of trying to cling to everything, learn to return to ourselves in every breath. When we understand impermanence, we will know to cherish every moment, knowing that peace does not come from changing the world, but from changing our own minds. In a hurried life, everyone sometimes feels heavy-hearted. Sometimes we are sad because of a misunderstanding from a colleague. Sometimes we lose sleep over a small, unsatisfactory event during the day. And then there are times we get angry at someone to the point where we can't stop asking ourselves why they treat us that way. These emotions keep repeating, making our minds uneasy, like a rippling lake. We think we suffer because others make us sad. But in reality, that suffering comes from a heart that doesn't yet know how to let go, doesn't know how to send out loving kindness, doesn't know how to open the door of liberation for itself. According to Buddhist teachings, the root of suffering lies in clinging. Some cling to what they like, cling to what they hate, cling to past events, and even to things yet to come. Each act of clinging is a binding of the mind. The Buddha once taught that the mind is like water. When it is still, we can see everything clearly. When it is agitated, images are distorted, and we see life through the disturbing lens of anger and affliction. If we want to see life gently, we must first let the water in our minds settle. And the way to do that is mindfulness, is breath, is gently letting go of what is no longer needed. It's very strange that although humans always crave peace, they often do things that make themselves lose peace. We get angry at someone and keep thinking about it. We are told harsh words and hold them in our hearts for a whole week. We read a negative comment, and our minds are immediately disturbed. A common human tendency is to react too quickly and then be led by emotions. When misunderstood, we immediately think we are insulted. When slandered, we immediately become defensive. When we meet someone who makes us sad, we immediately want to avoid or retaliate. But the faster we react, the more agitated the mind becomes. This reaction stems from long-standing habits that we don't recognize. Mindfulness helps us pause, helps us clearly see that behind every emotion are old, unhealed wounds. When we observe, we understand. When we understand, we can let go. And when we let go, we truly free ourselves. I want to tell you a very ordinary story about Miss Huang, a woman who once worried a lot about an unnecessary misunderstanding at work. That story made her realize a great lesson about self-compassion and forgiveness, helping her get through seemingly endless, dark days. Ms. Huang is an ordinary office worker, living in a small apartment complex with her husband and son. She is gentle, quiet, and always tries to fulfill her duties. At work, many people like her for her mild temperament and patience. But one day, she was misunderstood by a colleague named Vi on a project. Not checking carefully, Vi thought Ms. Huang was the one causing the delay. And in anger, Vi spoke ill of her behind her back in front of other colleagues. The news reached Ms. Huang one afternoon as she was about to leave work. She stood silently for a long time, her hands trembling slightly. The feeling of being misunderstood is one of the deepest sorrows for a sincere person. That night, she tossed and turned until nearly morning. Although she knew she had done nothing wrong, Vi's words kept repeating in her head, making her unable to find peace. She spoke less, smiled less, and whenever she saw Vi, her heart would tighten as if something was pressing down on it. Although she didn't voice it, she knew her mind was resentful. Once, feeling too stressed, she decided to sign up for a short weekend meditation retreat. It was during that retreat that she heard a sentence that she later said completely changed how she dealt with sorrow. The teacher spoke in a very gentle voice, as if reading a reminder from the depths of his heart. He said that when someone hurts us, we can choose resentment or choose liberation. Resentment is easy, but prolongs suffering. Liberation is difficult, but brings peace. Then he paused for a moment and spoke slowly, as if letting each word soak into the listener's mind. Send loving kindness to the person who makes you sad so that you can liberate yourself. Forgiveness is not because the other person deserves it, but because your heart deserves peace. That sentence brought tears to Ms. Huang's eyes. For the first time, she realized that in all this time, she had not only been won because of Vi, but had also made herself suffer by holding on to that sadness in her heart. During that meditation session, she was guided through a small exercise. First, to identify her breath, to know she was living in this moment. Then, to release negative energy by breathing in, recognizing the sadness, breathing out, smiling at herself, and then gradually sending wishes of peace to the person who hurt her. Not because that person was right or wrong, but because she wanted to free herself. In the days after the retreat, Ms. Huang spent 10 minutes each evening practicing. Sitting quietly, she closed her eyes and imagined placing her hand on her heart. She silently told herself that she chose peace instead of resentment. When she thought of Vai's name, she still felt uncomfortable, but she continued to breathe and smile gently. Each breath was a little letting go. Each wish of peace was a piece of loving kindness nurturing her own heart. By the second week, she realized she no longer tossed and turned every night. By the third week, when she accidentally met Vai in the company hallway, she no longer felt the heaviness she had before. And by the fourth week, when Vai proactively approached her to explain the misunderstanding and apologize, Ms. Huang was calm enough to smile and say, "Everything has passed. I don't dwell on it anymore." In that moment, she knew she had truly liberated herself, not because Vai had changed, but because she herself had transformed. Through that story, we clearly see that loving kindness and forgiveness are not gifts we give to others, but gifts we give to ourselves. When we send loving kindness, we are cleansing old wounds in our consciousness. When we forgive, we are removing the bonds that make our lives heavy. The Buddha once taught that anger is like a burning coal. One holds it to throw at others, but in the end, one burns oneself. To be at peace, one must drop that coal first. Looking deeper into the teachings in the scriptures, we will see that the mind of compassion is the root of liberation. 2, loving kindness, is wishing others happiness. B, compassion, is wishing others less suffering. When we generate a mind of compassion, the energy in our body and mind immediately changes. There is no longer resentment, no longer anger, no longer endless internal dialogues. The negative energies that burdened us little by little are transformed by the light of mindfulness. And when that light shines into every corner of the mind, we will see that life is much lighter than we thought. The lesson drawn from Ms. Huang's story is very simple, yet profoundly deep. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. We cannot choose how others treat us, but we can choose how we react. We cannot force others to understand us, but we can keep our hearts from being further hurt. Compassion is not weakness, but the greatest strength. One who can send loving kindness to the person who made them sad is one who has learned how to transform suffering into growth. When we practice mindfulness in daily life, we don't need to hide in the mountains or leave society. Mindfulness is found in washing dishes, in the morning breath, in the gaze at a loved one, in every time we choose which words to utter. We can start with the smallest things. When angry at someone, take a deep breath to identify the emotion. When sad, breathe out gently to embrace yourself. When encountering someone who once caused you discomfort, try to silently send them a wish of peace, not to change them, but to free yourself. A day of mindfulness practice can begin very simply by sitting still for 3 minutes and feeling your breath. Breathing in, know you are breathing in. Breathing out, know you are breathing out. The breath is the thread connecting us to the present. Only by being in the present can we let go of the past and not fear the future. We can silently repeat in our minds that we are complete in this moment, not rushing, not hurried, No need to compare with anyone, just us and the peace in our own breath. Mindfulness not only heals, but also helps us open our hearts. When we release negative energy, we cleanse the soil of our minds. When we send loving kindness, we nurture wholesome seeds. And when we wish ourselves peace, we cultivate gentle compassion. A heart that knows how to send out compassion will naturally receive peace. Because in this universe, wholesome energy always finds its way back to the one who sowed it. Ultimately, the most important thing is for us to know that no one can make us suffer if we don't make ourselves suffer. No one can take away our peace if we know how to return to our breath. No one can make us lost if we know how to look deeply into the mind to observe all emotions. Keeping the mind at peace is keeping a vast sky within ourselves. When the mind is at peace, afflictions naturally dissipate. When the mind is clear, life naturally becomes beautiful. If today you are still heavy-hearted with someone, try closing your eyes and sending them a wish of peace. You don't need to say it aloud. Just think it in your mind. See it as a gift you give to your heart. A heart that has suffered much deserves to be lighter, and you also deserve that peace. Life inherently operates by the law of impermanence, which no one can change. Today we are still here, talking together, breathing, smiling. But tomorrow, no one knows which way the wind will blow. Every morning, we open our eyes. We stand before a new opportunity to live a better version of ourselves. When we understand that everything is in a state of flux, we will no longer cling to things that burden our hearts. We will also no longer pay much attention to others' attitudes towards us. Because in this vast world, the only thing we can truly control is our own mind. If we know how to live virtuously, how to maintain inner stability, then even if the winds of life change direction, we will stand firm like a pine tree in the wind. According to Buddhist teachings, the reason humans suffer lies in interacting too much with external circumstances. We are sad when someone doesn't understand us. We get angry when someone acts contrary to our wishes. We feel hurt when someone is a little better than us. We envy them when they achieve something better. These reactions all stem from ego clinging. Thinking that our ego is important makes us easily hurt. Thinking that life must operate according to our will makes us irritable when things go against the grain. When the Buddha pointed out the Four Noble Truths, the first thing he mentioned was suffering. Humans suffer because desires are unfulfilled, suffer from attachments, suffer from wanting to hold on to what cannot be held. And among these many sufferings, there is a silent suffering that almost everyone has experienced. That is suffering from paying too much attention to the words and actions of others. The human mind is inherently easily agitated, like a lake surface just swept by the wind. Just hearing an unpleasant word is enough to immediately cloud the mind. Just a slightly cold attitude from someone, and one's heart already feels uneasy. We keep revolving in such thoughts, then unintentionally let others control our emotions. Many people still sigh that they want to live peacefully, but don't know how to find peace amidst a life full of storms. In reality, most of those storms don't come from outside, but from our own reactions. When someone gets angry, we choose to get angry back. When someone says unkind words, we let those words occupy our minds. When someone behaves badly, we let our sadness depend on them. The more we pay attention, the more we lose self-control. The more we compare, the more we lose peace. A friend once told me a story about his time studying abroad in a faraway country. He said that in the early days there, he experienced culture shock because people's lifestyles were so different. Once, he was misunderstood by a classmate just because of a sentence he hadn't had a chance to explain. The other person thought he was deliberately being sarcastic and maintained a cold attitude for a whole week. He thought about it a lot and was so sad he couldn't concentrate on his studies. One day, he confided in his academic advisor. The teacher smiled and said, "Everyone carries an invisible backpack containing experiences, joys, sorrows, and even wounds. When someone behaves badly towards you, it might not be that they hate you, but that they are reacting from their own inner wounds. You cannot always understand another person's story, but you can choose how to deal with your own emotions. When you live well and keep your mind clear, life will naturally arrange the right people and the right things. Heaven never lets down a good-hearted person." That story made him change his perspective. He no longer tried to explain or compete with his classmate. He focused on his studies, focused on doing the right thing, and maintained an amiable attitude. Sometime later, the other person realized their misunderstanding and proactively apologized. He said that it was, at that moment, he deeply understood that when we live well and don't hold grudges, all of life's imbalances will naturally correct themselves. No need to compete, no need to prove anything, just maintain an upright heart. That is the strength of virtue. In Buddhist scriptures, there is a saying, "Sow good seeds and reap good fruits, like father, like son." A person who lives kindly is like planting a good tree. Even with the impermanence of rain and sun, the tree still grows in its own time and yields sweet fruit when it is ready. A person who is often angry and envious is like someone who sows bitter seeds. The more they compete, the more uneasy their mind becomes. The more they judge, the darker their mind becomes. The Buddha once said that the human mind is like a field. If we sow good seeds on it, we will reap peace. If we sow seeds of anger, we will reap afflictions. Life is therefore always fair in a very natural way. The lessons from the Buddha's teachings are always simple, but never outdated. When we judge less, the mind becomes clearer. Because judgment is like a layer of dust covering the mind. The more we judge, the more distorted our view of life becomes. When we compete less, the heart becomes lighter. Because competition is like a bag of stones carried on our backs, the longer we carry it, the more tired we become. When we live kindly, blessings will come in ways we cannot predict. Because wholesome energy is like clear water, it always finds its way to clean places. And when anyone does anything, we don't pay too much attention. We maintain our peace without being drawn into the chaos of life. In the final days of the year, I met my friend from overseas studies again. He had become much more mature and tranquil compared to his younger self. He said that life taught him a very important lesson. No one can take away your peace if you don't give it away yourself. Others may speak wrongly about you, but they cannot determine your worth. Others may act with ill will, but they cannot cloud your mind if you maintain your clarity. He said that the further he traveled, the deeper he understood his parents' teaching from childhood. Live well, and heaven will naturally arrange things. A healthy tree has green leaves. A kind person has blessings follow. Clear water reflects the moon naturally. When we reflect on ourselves with the light of mindfulness, we will understand that all we truly need is a peaceful mind. A peaceful mind does not come from everything going our way. A peaceful mind comes from not paying attention to trivial matters. A peaceful mind is not about avoidance or escape. A peaceful mind is strong in its ability to choose what makes us light. When someone makes us sad, we can look deeper to understand that they are also suffering. When someone disappoints us, we can learn to accept instead of blaming. When life gives us unexpected changes, we can nod and remind ourselves that impermanence is the very nature of life. An older friend once told me that the older you get, the more you understand one truth. You don't have much time to fret over small matters. Every day that passes is precious. A deep breath is a blessing. A good night's sleep is a blessing. A meal shared with someone is also a blessing. Therefore, if someone does something we don't like, we just need to smile gently and say in our heart that we choose peace. When we are not controlled by the actions of others, we are truly free. Many people often ask, how can I lighten my mind amidst a life full of worries? I often say, there's a very simple way that anyone can do. Return to the breath. Breathe in to know you are alive. Breathe out to let go of all heaviness. Each breath is an opportunity to renew yourself. When we maintain that mindfulness, we will no longer be easily swept away by external circumstances. And when not swept away, we can look at everything with clear and kind eyes. The final message I want to convey is that in this vast life, there are things we cannot change and do not need to change. What others say, do, or think is their story. We just need to live so that our conscience is clear. When we live well, good things will come at the right time. When we keep our minds at peace, afflictions will naturally lighten. When we don't compete, heaven will naturally arrange fairness for us. Belief in goodness is the light that helps us pass through the darkest paths. And if today you feel tired, close your eyes for a few seconds and listen to these words. No one can take your peace if you don't give it away. Keeping your mind at peace in life is the greatest blessing you can create for yourself. As long as you continue to live kindly, continue to choose what is right, even if others choose what is wrong, continue to believe in karma, then heaven will naturally arrange everything. Just live well every day and let the universe take care of everything else. You just need to keep your heart pure, and all blessings will find their way back to you.